Hello and welcome back to BUCS Weekend Kickoff. This week I'm joined by special guests Max Vanhorne. Max, nice to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, man. Nice to be here.
Perfect. And for people who might not know you, can you maybe introduce yourself a little bit? What role and what team are you from?
I played for the Hertfordshire Hurricanes university team. Uh, Div 1 South. I played O-line for my first 2-3 years there and then transitioned onto the D-line.
And how have you found that transition so far? I've played both positions and they're both very different, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess playing D-line became a little easier because I played O-line first. I understood how an O-lineman goes to block and how they're stepping, so it was an easy transition for me.
And so far this year for the Hurricanes, you're having an outstanding year. Only losing one game, sitting at 5-1, top of your division. You've qualified for the playoffs. It can't get any better than that, can it?
Yeah, it's been an amazing year. We lost that one game. It was the first game of the season. We had a majority rookie team this year, so everyone was getting used to the physicality of the sport. That was just an unlucky game, but since then we've been flying. We've been doing so well.
And in that game, you only lost by a point to a Birmingham side that many people thought they'd go straight back up as well. So that must have been, a motivation to keep going this year.
Yeah, that was big. It was heads were down after that game for sure, but we played the next game, we won. We went on to the next game, we won again, and we just kept going on and on.
And your division this year has been quite a strange one, hasn't it? Because you've got you and yourselves and Oxford Brooks at the top, and then Birmingham, who it seems like all you're beating each other, but so far it's now you and Oxford Brooks going for a straight shootout, isn't it, for the rest of the year?
Yeah, we play them on the 15th as well. That'll be a massive game for us. We're assuming that they win out as well. That game decides who wins the group.
And last week playing against Oxford Lancers, unfortunately they're not having the best season, being 1-4. But how did you find that game?
That game was amazing. The offense just had it clicking from the start. The defense, one of the best games I've seen for them the entire year. Sacks after sacks, picks, pressures. It was amazing.
It must be nice coming back after Christmas, your first game back after Christmas and hit the ground running like you have done all season long.
Yeah, everyone, that first game back, you don't really know what to expect because people have taken some time off. They've gone back home. They've settled down. You don't know that you need to hit the ground running, and we really did hit the ground running.
And for yourself, what kind of drew you to American football? I think when I've had most people on, I've had an American on, they've just had it since they were young. Same with my guest last week, they've had it since, they were 9-10 years old. For yourself, how did you fall in love with the game?
I went to the uni and then I was just with some of my friends one day in the car park waiting for an Uber to go play some football. And there was a guy in the gym, he tapped on the window, just put up his phone and said, join American football. We said, all right, we will. Went down to the first training session and we all just fell in love with it from then.
There's kind of the story of most teams in it at the minute, especially in BUCS football. That's kind of it. You just talk to anybody you possibly can do and get as many bodies as you can down.
Yeah, especially at sports fairs at the start of the year. You just, whoever you see walking past, come join the team. You get as many people down to Charles as possible.
Yeah, throughout the year, you ended Oxford Brooks' incredible run. I think that's surprised quite a lot of people. Oxford Brooks, when they started the year, they went 3-0 straight away, travelled to Hertfordshire and lost 21-14. That must have been something where you guys think, yeah, we can push on now. We can keep this going and see, if we could get the playoffs and potential promotion.
Yeah, because even before that game, we saw them as potentially the biggest threat. Obviously, they'd won 3 games straight. We couldn't let up another loss after that first one. We knew we had to go on and keep winning. So as soon as that final whistle went, everyone was ecstatic.
And then you did the same again against Birmingham. They were coming off of a great win against East Anglia, but you put them to the sword and beat them 35-0 as well. So that shows there how strong you are on both sides of the ball, doesn't it?
Yeah, that game again was amazing by the defense, holding them to 0 as well. I know that I think they did have some injuries, but you can only play what's in front of you, And unfortunately, on the day, we just outperformed them.
It's exactly that. You just got to play what's in front of you, and this week in front of you is East Anglia.
Yeah.
The obvious question is: are you expecting a game this week? Obviously, last week they dropped out of their game and forfeited against Oxford Brooks. So far, is the game still going ahead?
Yeah, from what we've been told by the coaches from the team, they've spoken to East Anglia as well, and they said that the game is set to go ahead. So as far as we're concerned, we're preparing for that game and we're ready to play them.
Perfect. And last time out against them, 28-6 win. Kind of a nice little win that for you, isn't it? Are you expecting more of the same this week?
Yeah, we're expecting to still put up some scores on them. Hopefully, maybe this time the defense can hold them to 0, but you never know.
Yeah, and it's always nice when you call them 0, and especially with the rankings. At the minute we have you at the number 2 seed across the south, and playing a home game in the first round of the playoffs. That must be something to hang on to when you go into these last 2 games of the season.
Yeah, exactly. But we want number 1. We want that number 1 seed. This will be one of the first Hurricanes teams to actually, if we can win the group in 4 or 5 years now. So that is our goal. We want to win this group.
Yeah, I remember Hertfordshire quite a few years ago when they were in the Prem South, and they were in the national championship against Leeds Beckett, losing out on that day. But definitely be great to see Hertfordshire back in that Prem South to see what's changed in such a little time. On the opposite side of your table this week, Oxford take on Oxford BUCS. To many people, that'd just be an Oxford BUCS win. Do you see that more of the same, having played both teams?
You can never say what happens on the day. It could be a day where Lancers turn up and just do one. They get the win there. We're praying for it. Hopefully, it'd be really good for us, but we never know.
And of course, if Oxford BUCS do win that game, it all goes down to next week when you travel to BUCS. That must be that must be why you play the sport, in it, for games like that.
Yeah, that will be one of the biggest games I think of our season. Apart from obviously if we get far in playoffs, we make the promotion game. Of course, that's the biggest game. But as of right now, in the short term, that would be the biggest game of the year.
And I think this has been one of the most entertaining divisions throughout the entirety of BUCS this year. And definitely, when it can go down to the last day, like it has a strong possibility to, that must be a great feeling as a player, that you don't have to look too far ahead and worry about what other teams are doing. You've just got to worry about what you're doing and be in that headspace. So that must be nice as a player, just to just think about that you can control it more than anything else.
Yeah, we've never been to where Oxford BUCS play as well. I've been there. I've watched a Saints game there, but I've been telling everyone it's a lovely field. It's Astro. We perform exceptionally well on Astro turf as well. So we know we can go there and we can get a result.
Yeah, perfect. And for yourselves, as we have it right now, if everything the season today, you'd be hosting Brighton. They're their third seed. They're the third seed in their division, respectfully, but definitely it looks quite favourable for you for as the Hertfordshire Hurricanes going in as the 2 seed. Only King's College London above you. You look at that and you think that you can really push on and go up to the Prem South, which would be an incredible return for the Hurricanes, when I don't think most people expected that this year.
Yeah, I mean, if we do have to play Brighton, we played them twice last year. They were in our group, so we do know a bit about them. We do know they do have some quality over there, so that would also be a tough game. But the same with KCL, where I'm kind of hoping they do probably get a draw at the end of the season on the 15th, but we never know.
Yeah, because I think the BUCS fixture alignment this year has been great for the last week. Even in the Prem National, you've got you have Durham and Nottingham Gold facing off again in the last week. Across the North 1A, there's some great games, and like yourself in the last week, you guys host you travel to number 2 Oxford BUCS. KCL host Kent. It seems that last week is just going to be absolute chaos for everybody involved with seedings and how the playoffs is going to turn out. So it's got to be incredible to be a part of it and just watch what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that last week, I was speaking to one of the coaches the other day. That last week is going to be crazy. We only just realised on yesterday that those Kent and KCL do play on the 15th. So as well as us watching our own game and trying to get the result, we also have to be watching their game to see maybe if KCL can lose or if there's a draw, and then we could end that game. We could end that day as the 1 seed. So that'd be great for us.
Exactly. Well, Max, thanks for joining me, and next I'll be speaking about all the rest of the fixtures. So yeah, thank you, Max.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, welcome to the second part of episode 3. As you can see, it's just me, no Max now. Then again, massive thank you for him to joining us. But it's going to be me who's just going to run through the fixtures for this week. And we'll start in the Prem National. There's only one game this weekend, and it's possibly the game of the entire weekend, possibly the second half of the season, where the UWE Bullets will travel up to Durham. Now, in the reverse fixture of this game, which happened, all the way back in November in week 6, we saw UE come out with 28-17 victors in this game. However, we couldn't forget that the weather was poor. Durham did struggle to get from that. They struggled to battle the weather, and I think that at the time, UE were just all together, just more sound. It's a long way to go for both sides. Either you're travelling down to Bristol or you're travelling up to Durham. It's a long trip for both teams. But definitely this time, I think it's going to be a bit more of a fair advantage. It's on a Saturday for all those who are wanting to go watch. I believe that BUCS are also streaming this game as one of the biggest games of the week. So definitely one to look out for those who are looking for some Saturday afternoon entertainment. It's going to be a tough one. We've seen Durham so far this season come out and be quite dominant against the strong sides. Apart from their game against UWE, you look at the teams who they've played and they've dominated. You look at the game against Gold just before Christmas. In that game, they dominated, and I believe that if they can, carry on the same, they came through the game against Leeds Beckett relatively unscathed with injuries. I believe that Durham can really solidify themselves as one of the challengers. Right now, you've got Nottingham Gold sit at the top of the tree. They're 5-1. UWE 5-1 at the same time. They can leapfrog Nottingham Gold this week and make sure that they're going one and they're number one. Sorry, going into next week when they face Nottingham Gold. But definitely for Durham, who's now chasing, they can go up to second. They can put themselves up for that home advantage of having a home playoff game, and that's going to be a massive advantage for any team now in this Prem National. You're looking at what it could be, and right now it's Nottingham Gold against Loughborough at David Ross, and it's UWE against Durham all the way back in Bristol. So this is a must-win game for Durham, if it's just for home field advantage, or it's the fact that they just want or to finish second or potentially even first, because we can't forget that they have got to face Nottingham Gold again in 2 weeks' time. So this game here is going to have massive implications for the rest of the season and definitely for the rest of the playoffs. Then, if we look into the Prem North, we can say congratulations to Nottingham Trent Renegades. After their 2 wins last week, I forgot to talk about their game against Newcastle, which was on a Wednesday, weirdly. But, putting up 75 points over the 2 games was massive work from Nottingham Trent Renegades and Ian, who joined us all the way back in episode 1. But no, Northumbria Leeds, this could be the end of Leeds in the Prem North for this season. A loss here means they're relegated. And that's got to play on the minds a little bit. They haven't looked good so far this year. The game against Nottingham Trent last week, that's got 8 points. It's less than what they scored, it's more than what they scored, in the return leg. It's going to be difficult for them to really overcome this. Northumbria also coming off a 35-15 loss. They, against Warwick, it really seems like Nottingham Trent and Warwick are the class of this division, and then it's the rest of them. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens for the rest of the year. Northumbria having the horse as well. Leeds, it's not an easy trip for Leeds. I could see this weekend that Leeds will be relegated from the Premier North, and if they win, it'll be great, because then it means that next week you get a grudge match of Newcastle Leeds to see who's going to go down and who's going to get the last playoff space. But definitely, Leeds need to show something that they haven't shown all season this weekend. The opposite of that, Warwick, they're still looking strong. They can't claim the number 1 spot and go into it knowing that they're going to have home games throughout the playoffs. But definitely this here against Newcastle is a winnable game for them. Newcastle coming off a heavy loss last Wednesday against Nottingham Trent. It's going to be hard for Newcastle. Newcastle, if they win, they stay in. It's really easy for them, and I think that's their main focus now. That realistically, you can't get tied up on if we lose and then we've got to play Leeds. It's simple: win and you stay in the division. It's not that simple when you're playing Warwick. Now Warwick can't win the league. They perhaps start to ease off a little bit, and they start to just say, okay, well, we're not going to put out our starters. We might put, for the first bit, and then our second string guys are going to come in and just make sure that we go to the playoffs as healthy as we can. But definitely for Newcastle, it's a must win for them, especially when they're going into Leeds the next week. And they've got a 2-score advantage, got an 11-point advantage on Leeds. If Leeds this week can show that they can score points all of a sudden, that isn't that much of an advantage. So this weekend in the Prem North, it's going to be interesting, especially at the bottom of the Prem North, to see who goes down and what happens. But hopefully this week we get a bit more clarity, or Leeds come out with a win, Newcastle lose, and we've seen that next week we get that incredible game where realistically anything can happen. And Leeds are going to have to travel up to Newcastle again. They're traveling to Newcastle this week. They're going to have to travel up again next weekend. So hopefully, they can find some joy in the northeast. Over at the south, Exeter Portsmouth. Exeter on their socials this week was quite funny, I must admit. But 0-6, they need to win this game. It's really as simple as that, isn't it? You look at it from before. Portsmouth came out with 26 home win last time these two's played. You need to score, like 2 touchdown lead. It's that simple for Exeter. Score that, get your head-to-head right and see what happens. Because, the points against are looking a lot better than Portsmouth. They're not a leaky team. They just struggle to win, and that's kind of their issue. It's been their issue all season, and they haven't won so far. Obviously, it's been their issue. But no, Portsmouth, travelling to Exeter, it's that same thing as Newcastle, and win it, you stay in the division. It's not been the year that Portsmouth wanted. After last year, you thought they'd be able to kick on and really show what they can do, and they just haven't been able to. But definitely Exeter this week, again, much like Leeds, we could see both sides in the north and the south relegate this week. But hopefully, everything goes down into the last week, and when Exeter go to Cardiff next week, we see that Exeter have still got a chance, and all they need to do, again, is go out and win. On the flip side of that, we've got SGS against Cardiff. Now, SGS, you can argue here that would they be saving themselves perhaps for next week against Brunel, but that'd be ridiculous to think that. You're playing a Cardiff side that are 3-3. They're coming off of a good result a couple of weeks ago against Portsmouth. It's going to be struggling for Cardiff. I think these two teams have been playing each other now for what seems like years, and but definitely I think that SGS, to keep that pressure on Brunel going into next week, they're going to have to win. We haven't crowned the champion yet in the Prem South, and we could claim it this weekend. If Cardiff can beat SGS, Brunel will then be the champions of the Prem South. So definitely, this game could be quite tricky for SGS to see what Cardiff come out, because sitting at 500, we don't know what Cardiff are. You'd expect next week, if Exeter are out of the division, you expect them to win, so you expect to at least be to get 4 wins this year. Could they make it 5 and perhaps overtake SGS and get second seed? He's all these possibilities. SGS, but we know what they're like. We know the program's like. We know how good they are and resolute they are at defense. And yeah, I think in the south it's interesting top and bottom. But if SGS lose and Brunel then claim champions, first year in the division, the champions of the Prem South, that's an incredible year. And Cardiff securing their safety as well last 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it's a massive week in the Prem North and Prem South, just to kind of see how the playoffs lie and what kind of what's going to happen. And as we look to the north, we're supposedly going to get a full slate of fixtures in the Scottish division. However, I won't be speaking about Aberdeen Glasgow because I don't think that's going to happen. Aberdeen haven't played a game all season. They dropped out of another game last week. So definitely I don't know if that's going to happen. So Heriot Watt Stirling. Heriot Watt, the only games that they've won this year, they're currently only got 2 wins, and their 2 wins are against Aberdeen, who haven't played. That kind of speaks for itself. Stirling 5-2. They've qualified for the playoffs. Can they help their seeding a bit better and beat Heriot Watt? I think so. Heriot Watt only scored 12 points all year. That's kind of the issue with Heriot Watt. They haven't scored enough. They've conceded less than what Glasgow have in the same division, only by 1 point. But still, Heriot Watt need to find something here, even if they can shock it, because it'd be nice to see it. But again, Stirling qualified for the playoffs. They've got nothing to worry about. They will be in the postseason. It's all about how good their seeding can be, and I don't think the coaches up at Stirling will want their standings to drop because of a game against Heriot Watt. So that is definitely going to be an interesting one. And then you got Edinburgh Napier against Edinburgh. Edinburgh Napier, crown champions of the Scottish 1A. Edinburgh still got a fighting chance to get in the playoffs. We're expecting Glasgow to get the win this week, so they'll take them to 4-3-1, and that'll be their season finished. And it'll be in the hands of Edinburgh. Sorry, if Edinburgh can get a win against Edinburgh Napier, side that's gone undefeated in divisions for, well, at least this season and last. I don't know about the season before. You don't expect that to happen, but it'd be nice if it could for Edinburgh. 2-3-1. Maybe get to 3-3-1, and it takes you into the last week where you're playing Heriot Watt, a side that's only scored 3 points, and it gives you a good chance to perhaps get in the playoffs and make that free seed. But again, I think if Glasgow win this week and Edinburgh fail to win, I think Glasgow, are definitely in that third seed of the Scottish. Then it also depends on how Sheffield and Manchester Met do in their respective divisions to see if they will be able to make it into the playoffs. Speaking of Manchester Met's division, they're not playing this week. So again, they'll be watching from afar of what happens in Scotland and what happens in the Midlands. But we've got Liverpool Edge Hill. This game is a relegation, a relegation fight. You've got Edge Hill 0-6 coming off of a hefty loss to the Lancashire Rams. They're 7-0. And then you got Liverpool, who are coming off their own heavy defeat last week. It's going to be really interesting, this game, because Liverpool have only got a 12-point advantage head to head. They're going to have to find something else to try and turn the tide a little bit. Edge Hill, speaking to their coaches, they think that they can find that 12 points, they can find the 14 points to overtake them, and going to 1-6, making Liverpool 1-6 as well, kind of muddies the water a little bit. Liverpool need to win to stay in the division. Right now, you've got Derby, who are on 3 points, Liverpool, who are on 2. A reminder that 3 teams get relegated from 2 divisions. So right now, Leicester are already relegated. That was secured last week after their loss. Your next one that you're looking at is Edge Hill. If they lose this week, you could potentially say you will be able to say that they're relegated. If Liverpool can win, that puts them on 4 points. Derby's still on 3. Derby have got 2 games left to play, and we'll speak about their game next, because that's for them, is a must win, and probably will be a win. But definitely that Liverpool, if they can win here, then go to Manchester, then host Manchester next week, it looks good for the end of their season. Now, on the flip side of that, you've got 2 sides who are doing really, really well at the minute in that division. You've got Manchester, who are 5-1. They've secured the playoffs, and you've got Lancashire 7-0. They've secured the playoffs. Lancashire will win and so the division, and it's theirs. Manchester, if they can find a win, it makes it really interesting. It goes to the last game again, and it all goes down to what can happen. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I see that Lancashire will win this game. Haven't conceded a point all season. They've looked incredible. So it's definitely for them going to be more of a how many points can we try and score? How many how good can our seedings look? Because again, they win this week. They're currently the number 1 seed. It's hard to say that they're going to concede, more than 20 points. Edinburgh not concede any in 2 games and see what happens. Well, in one game they definitely won't concede any, because it's against Aberdeen, but the other one against Edinburgh, it's definitely going to be interesting. But again, Lancashire can sew up that number 1 seed this week. We will win and have the home field advantage. But we've seen what they can do to Lancashire. And in the playoffs last year, when they lost to Stirling, who were coming out with quite a low seed, but definitely it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this week for the Northern 1A. Because if Manchester can get a shock result and score some really, really good points, it kind of messes up the entirety of the Tier 1 North. And I think I'm here for the chaos, and I love the chaos. On the flip side, in the Midlands, no Nottingham Green this week. They take the week off after playing Derby and beating Derby quite handsomely. But Derby will go to Leicester. Leicester already relegated, as I said. Derby need to win to secure their hopes of playing in the Tier 1 again. And it's kind of easy to see that they'll probably do this against Leicester. 0-7. When I watch them, they look a depth of ideas. They look like they can't get the ball moving. When I saw them, the only scoring play was a pick 6, and that kind of says it all. The defense has got some really good talent on. The offensive side of the ball is where it struggles. So Derby, storage program, I can see them doing just fine in this and taking themselves up to 5 points and potentially securing their place in Tier 1 next year. Then we've got the Steel City Derby coming back. Last time Sheffield Hallam, it was an unexpected result, and they beat Sheffield quite easily. Sheffield just need to try and find something. They're currently still in that 3rd seed kind of mix, 3-2-1. it looks quite good for them. It's going to be interesting with like the Manchester Met and how Glasgow play the rest of the year to see if they can keep in that Hull Sheffield. But with their run of results now, you've got to struggle for Sheffield. They need to find a win here. Next week they play Nottingham Green. You don't see them beating the Green going into the playoffs, and Green still hunting for that second or maybe even first place seed. They've got to find something here against the Sheffield Hallam side that that have lost quite well to Green on 2 occasions now. If Sheffield can win, then that flips their seeds. Sheffield will go into what will be the Midlands 2 spot. Sheffield Hallam down to that Midlands 3. It's all going to just mix it up a little bit. And it's going to make it so much more interesting than what it would be normally. But definitely something here needs to give, and hopefully we can find something that is going to be incredible to watch for the last week. And we get to see all these. Oh well, this team needs this and this team needs that. But I think that Sheffield this week need to focus at the game in hand and win if they want to secure themselves in the playoff and see how far they can go. Because this year it's been a really, really good season for Coach Phil. His first year back in Tier 1 and done remarkably well. A lot better than most people thought of them. And now we'll go south. Bournemouth, Southampton. Now Bournemouth haven't secured in place yet in the playoffs. A win here can all but do it. They haven't done it just because of, even though they're 7-0 with their points taken off them at the start of the season, that hurt them quite a lot. But definitely a win here can all but do it. Playing Southampton 4 points. They're pretty much safe. They can take it into the last week if Plymouth win, but realistically, they're safe. They're going to be fine. They're playing Tier 1 football next year. So yeah, Bournemouth, it's theirs to lose. Definitely they need to find that. Bath, it was a close loss. Our friends over at Death Chat Sports were there to cover that game. They're playing Plymouth this week at home. Right now they need to find a win and to try and get the playoffs back in view. Currently Birmingham and Brighton are sat above them in that 7th to 9th tier kind of range. So a win here can really help that. But again, a win means that Plymouth will be relegated if Bath can win. And, it means that Southampton are safe. Bournemouth can, potentially be in that 2 spot. And I think it's quite a worrying thing if you're anyone in the south facing Bournemouth. Right now, they'd face Bristol in the playoff if it ended today. They've beaten Bristol multiple times already this season. Any team, Bournemouth are a talented side. Yes, they may be the 6th seed, but they're only the 6th seed because of an admin error. That's it, not because of the way they've played football. And I think if you're KCL, your Oxford, Brooks, Hertfordshire, it's going to be quite a worry for them. And then, as we spoke to Max earlier, East Anglia will host Hertfordshire Hurricanes this week. He gave his thoughts earlier, so I won't go back on that. If you want to listen to that and listen to it back in order, you can just rewind it, I guess. But no, and then we get the Oxford derby, Oxford Lancers against the Oxford Brooks. Nearly said Panthers, but they're not the Panthers anymore. Oxford Brooks need to carry on their momentum, put some real pressure on Hertfordshire. If Hertfordshire can win again, Oxford Brooks win again, and then it goes down to that last week of the season and of who can do what and where can. It's incredible. I love this Hertfordshire Brooks rivalry we've got this year with Birmingham also entering the fray. It's going to be incredible. I think a win here for both sides is very doable, and we'll just get to see, how it all shapes up. East Anglia, however, will be relegated. They have won a game. However, their forfeit this week to Oxford Brooks mean that they're now on -2 points. And they're now at 0. They do not. They do play again, but because of the minus points, because of the minus points, it means that we have them as relegated. Obviously, we might not be right. We'll have to wait till next season to see what happens. But right now, we have East Anglia as being relegated down to Tier 2. I remember when they were a Prem side. It's never nice to see a side go from the Prem all the way down to Tier 2, but we've seen that now multiple occasions. But definitely, this Southern has been interesting all year long. You got the 3 at the top, Birmingham, who people thought were going to go straight back up, Hertfordshire, who've come out of nowhere, and also Brooks, who've come from Tier 2, just gone to the next level and just found the place. But definitely, it's going to be an incredible watch, especially next week, to see how we can get on. And let's hope next week we might be able to find a guest from Oxford Brooks and get their side of the argument between Hertfordshire and Oxford Brooks, and we can have a real chat about what their kind of hopes are going into the playoffs. And now we go to the Southeast, where it's going to be quite an interesting week, especially again leading up into next week. I think the BUCS gods have given us incredible fixtures for the last week in the Tier 1, North and South. This week we've got King's College London, who will face the UCL Emperors. It's all but written on the wall, isn't it, that King's College London are going to carry on their incredible run, unbeaten all so far. A win here can really boost their hopes into finishing at 1 seed in the Southeastern and going into the playoffs quite high up. And now we head to the Southeastern. So it's going to be quite a telling week this week. I think that we've got the KCL. KCL will host UCL. A loss for UCL. Pretty much the writing's on the wall that they will be relegated not this week, but next week. King's College, another win here. It means that their matchup next week against Kent is going to be pure cinema. Kent get the week off. They get to rest, recuperate. So we get to see that matchup next week to see who's going to take the division. But a win here for KCL will really boost their chances of taking it. In the other game, we have Brighton will host Kingston. Kingston need a win to make sure that they stay in the division. If Kingston win, UCL lose, UCL will be relegated. Now, Brighton have had that 500 season, much like we spoke about before, in the North. Right now, they sit in the playoffs with Birmingham in that 7 and 8 seed. However, a loss opens the door for Bath. Bath could still sneak in there, and I think that Kingston this week will definitely be going to Brighton and thinking, we can win here. A win here means we're promoted. Let's just do it. Let's get it done now. Not wait till next week, because if they wait till next week, they have to wait for the Brighton UCL game. Anything can happen there. If UCL need a win, they could come out and just get a win. But right now, Kingston have it in their hands, and a win here means it's still in their hands and they are safe. So definitely this week in the Southeastern, it's all about safety for Kingston. It's all about pushing forward King's College London, and hopefully, both sides can get what they want, and we it makes next week more interesting, especially if King's College win. That game against Kent is going to be absolute lights out. It's going to be incredible to watch. Two of the highest scoring teams in this division. Well, yeah, the two highest scoring teams. In the Southeastern, anyways. It's going to be great to see what kind of happens, especially going forward, because it could flip the playoffs on its head and really just change the landscape of everything going into next week. Now, if we go over to the North 2A, okay, we've got Kiel against Staffordshire. Now, this game here, you got Staffordshire, who are currently in second place, against Kiel, who are in last. Lancaster took I've got the loss, just to confirm, they got the loss last week against LJMU. It was an implayable field. LJMU gets the win for that one and gets the 2 points, more importantly. Staffordshire here can also just go on level terms with these. We're playing 3 games. And you'll see Kiel is quite an easy target to overcome. And for most of the games this year, it has been, lost to LJMU in quite high numbers. Gave Salford their only win in their first win in their BUCS career. So definitely, it's going to be interesting to see this one, to see if Kiel have got any fight back in them coming back after Christmas, or if Staffordshire can show what they did against Salford and, score 20 points again and just get the win. And then it makes next week's game, Staffordshire LJMU, even more interesting. I think next week is possibly one of the biggest weeks of the entire BUCS calendar, especially for your Tier 1s and Tier 2s, because we get to finally see, okay, this team needs this, and then they'll clinch it and it's done. But this week is all what Staffordshire have got to think about, get the job done over Kiel, and then you can start planning for LJMU and what the Fury can bring to Staffordshire. As we flip over, we're supposed to get a full slate of games this week. York St John York got called off last week. This week, we're supposed to get the return leg of it. York St John hosting York. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. If it does, let's hope so. Both teams so far have only played 2 games. York sit third, York St John sit fourth. York have got 2 draws. They're on 2 points. York St John have lost both their games, conceding 44 points. Again, I can't really say much than last week because we haven't learned anything. York should come out with a honest game. But again, it's all dependent on the field. If that game is actually going to happen. If it doesn't, these 2 sides now are running out of time to get to get the games in, if I'm being really honest. Next week, York St John, for the rest of the season now, it's full. It's, there's 2 games in this division next week, 2 games the week after, and then we get the playoffs. It's tough. York St John will want this game. Sorry, York will want this game to happen. They're currently the 8th seed. They need this game to happen to stop Salford getting playoffs. Salford can still get playoffs, which is mental to me. There's not that many games here, and it's quite annoying there isn't a lot of games. But York need a win here to help their chances of going in the playoffs. But definitely, so far, the class of that division has been Sunderland. Sunderland will go to Hull this week after beating them 22-8 last week. They're running back on social media, had an incredible game. It's going to be really interesting to see how Sunderland can do this. Because you got to remember, all they need to do is win their division. If they win their division, then they go up. So far, they're sat on 5 points, Hull on 3. So if the game between York and York St John doesn't go ahead again, it's going to be interesting to see which way BUCS decide how the points go, or if the points go anywhere, if it's null and voided because the teams haven't played. But a win here for Sunderland can really help their promotion hopes. And it's, I can see that happening again. We haven't got that much to go off for this too. All we've got to go off is a 22-8 win in favour of Sunderland Spartans. But definitely going on the road, it's going to be even tougher. So yeah, it's going to be an incredible week again in this division, like it has been for most of the season when they have played. And then we also get another one, which is quite weird because we spoke about how good the fixtures were in Tier 1. But this week, it just kind of seems like they've just flipped them around. So De Montfort will host Lincoln after coming out 14-12 victors last week. De Montfort on a 2-game win streak. That's kind of come out of nowhere. I don't think we normally expect that from this kind of program, but definitely 2 wins, potentially could get a 3rd one here. And right now, they are challenging AIU for the playoffs, the team that they beat just before Christmas to go on this run. It's going to be interesting. DMU have one more game after this against Coventry. Coventry and Cambridge now look like the class of that division. Cambridge with the bagpipes. And so, yeah, De Montfort this week can really help themselves out. We're getting a potential playoff spot if they can beat Lincoln, a side they've just beaten, at home as well. So it's going to be hard for Lincoln to go there and try and get a victory after what happened last week. And finally, into the south, Swansea UWE 2. Again, another great game. The top 2 of this division, both undefeated. We get to see where both sides are, who's going to clinch the top. You've got Swansea who's played 1 more game, but scored 22 more points overall. Only conceded 2. They've conceded a safety their entire season. Their defense has not conceded a single point, which is incredible. UE2 program that isn't, is affiliated in name with Bullets, but isn't with the same playbook or anything like we've seen with the green gold kind of togetherness. They've scored 50, conceded 13. They look like a really good team as well. They only played 2 games, however, and their last game was all the way back on the 16th of November. They've had a lot of time to mull over what's been going on, to watch around and what's happening, especially with Swansea. But this week, it's time for them to come out of the woodwork and really show what they're about. Then the second game in this is Worcester against Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth last week did pull out their game and forfeit the game against Swansea. It gave Swansea an extra 2 points. But this week, we kind of hope that they'll get a game against Worcester. The Worcester Royals, who currently on the edge of the playoffs in in the 9th seed when they need to be in the 8th, really want this game to go ahead, or maybe don't and want the 2 points just anyways and get the win and go on to 5 points for the season and potentially even go up to the 2nd seed if UWE lose. It's absolutely crazy. This week is Worcester's last game of the season as well, so they want to go up on a high and kind of it's still going to be out of their hands. It's going to be in everyone else's hands. It's going to be in Greenwich and Sussex's hands for the rest of their season. But definitely Worcester, a win here can all but help their playoff push and potentially see them overtake UWE2s and go up into the 4 and 6 seeds, which is going to be incredible to see. Now in the Southern, Royal Holloway will host Sussex and Reading will host Surrey. So Royal Holloway 1-1. It's again facing a Sussex side that are unbeaten. Only lost 1 time. for Royal Holloway, let's see what happens. They win again. They're a side that can go into the playoffs. It's one thing this year with BUCS where because they haven't given Div 2 or Tier 2 enough games, it's kind of tough to see in every single game matters. So right now, if RHU can win, it helps them get the playoffs. They've only played 2 games this season. If Sussex lose, that's their season gone. That's their season over. They've got one more game left against Reading, but a loss there can really, really hurt them. And then obviously Reading, Surrey, to top 2, only split by the points against, and Surrey have conceded 7 more points. Have conceded 21. Reading conceded 14. Reading highest scoring across their 3 games. They've scored 83 points to 56 for Surrey. It's definitely going to be one that could be potential to be high scoring or really defensively focused. Reading to get themselves back up into Tier 1 the first time of asking is going to be huge. A win here can really help themselves here, and they play Sussex. So a win really pushes it forward, and then it's in their hands. Whereas a loss here, and it's in Sussex's hands. So both sides here are going to go for the win no matter what, because it's promotion. They have to win the division to get promotion. It's not the North or South. They're in Tier 1. They have to win. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I could see that game being really, really close and being really, really interesting between the two. And then finally, in the Southeastern, Greenwich take on City St George. Greenwich and City St George have the exact same record of 1-2 and 1. 3 points. Greenwich have conceded least. It's going to be a really, really good one. This game, I think it's going to be, like most of it, it's going to be quite close. I'm just checking to see if they've played already, and they have a 12-12 draw. 12-12 draw is quite the theme in Div 2 this year. We've seen it a lot in the Northeastern, but definitely in this one, a close game. Could be even closer going forward. I can't get any closer, can they? But I think this game here is going to be quite a great watch to see what goes on and what happens here. And, I could potentially see an upset. Well, not an upset, but I could see whatever side wins here potentially making a run for the playoffs. Right now, Greenwich are in that. If they win here, they can really help themselves solidify that the 7 or the 8 spot. But alternatively, City St George win, they leapfrog Greenwich. They can then help themselves to a playoff spot. And with both sides left to play 2 games, Greenwich have got Imperial next week. That's a tough game for Greenwich. And City St George have got bottom place Essex. So I think the running does favour City St George, and they can really help themselves here with a win. But anyways, that's all for me. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for Max for joining me earlier on in the show. And again, if you want to get involved in the show, if you want to join me and speak about football for 45 minutes, half an hour, DM either myself or DM Inside Brickball, and we'll get back to you, and we'll happily have you on and just talk football. But no, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.